They don't want what we know out there.
How a person can go from really almost nothing to becoming a millionaire by owning rental properties.
He would always buy these flip houses, and I just remember thinking, this guy is crazy. Why would he buy that house?
In the past decade, there's been a huge surge in the peer-to-peer short-term rental market.
Become an insider. So you have to know the rules before you get the game.
Every second counts. So make every second count.
Welcome to the Real Estate Jam. Whether you're just beginning or the best of the best, we're glad you're here. We will share successes, failures, and strategies for the action-taking real estate investor. And now to your hosts, JD and Melissa.
Hey guys, welcome to the Real Estate Jam podcast. I'm JD with my wonderful co-host.
Me, Melissa. Hey JD, how are you?
I'm doing all right today. How are you?
Awesome. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. Monday's always a super busy day for us. We got all of our team meetings and everything in the morning. But we're lucky today because we got a kind of an expert in multiple different strategies, real estate investor who operates HBG Capital. We're talking to Brandon Cobb today. He's done a lot of the stuff that we've been doing. He's progressed onto some bigger and exciting things, raising funds, new build construction. He's acquisitions / sales genius, and we're really excited about the nuggets he's going to drop today. Brandon, thank you so much for finding time to come on our show.
Well, I don't know about the genius thing. The bar's been set really high, but JD and Melissa, I appreciate y'all having me on. It's an honor to be on your show.
Thank you.
Oh, awesome. Well, for some of our audience that may not know you, can you kind of introduce yourself and give us a rundown of how you got into real estate, where you started, and then where you're at now, and we'll kind of dive in from there.
Yeah, so I'll start with the now. We can kind of reverse engineer it and go back as far as you want. But now, co-partner, CEO, HBG Capital. We assist investors to help build their legacy, achieve their dreams, and impact those around them through unique real estate investments. And that wasn't always the case. My background was actually in my dream job. I always knew that when I was getting out of college, I wanted to do medical device sales. And so I just grinded every single day. I had a job in the construction industry. I was selling fiber cement, but I knew that I really wanted to do medical device sales. I don't know what it was. It might have been the scrubs. It might have been working in the hospitals. It just sounded really sexy. And when I finally broke in, it took me about 2 years of networking and trying to get very creative, networking my way into the industry and figuring out what these hiring managers want and how to differentiate. Finally got a job. And I loved it. Spent 2 years doing knees and shoulders. If you had an ACL that was torn, chances are it was my allograft products or my screws that was going in. Yeah, I mean, I loved it. I had a absolute blast. And I remember one Friday I had this surgeon who I was trying to court, was trying to get his business. We had this big power trial going on at the hospital. And I was so excited to go sit down with my boss afterwards and tell him how the surgeries went. And he sat me down and fired me. And I just remember thinking to myself, what in the world did I do to deserve this? Holy shit. Like I'm sitting over here. I got all these cool sales awards that he had given me. I'm grinding. I think I'm doing a good job. They hired me on an associate to help, take care of some of the business. And I just remember being very confused. I was like, what could I have done to prevent this? And so that was really the day that I realized nobody was going to look out for, my financial well-being but me. And from that day on, I said, I'm going to figure out a way to make money myself. I gave myself a 6-month ultimatum and said, hey, if I can do it in 6 months, great. I'll keep doing this. And if I can't, well, I can always go back and get another job. Mm-hmm. And so, luckily things have worked out.
Yeah, that's one of the common themes that we find across a lot of the investors that we interview is that something happens in their life that makes them question the stability of what it was that they were doing, and that spurs them into action. So I think, one, you're definitely not alone in a story like that. And I think also with a lot of the real estate investors that we deal with, their goal initially pivots once they reach some level of difficulty or some unexpected situation. And I think that's a quality that all the entrepreneurs that I know have. And it was probably, if you're looking back at it now, the best thing that could have happened to you, right?
Yeah, 100%. You always got to go to where the blue oceans were. And, for us at the time, 6 years ago, it was, doing a lot of wholesaling and house flipping. We saw an opportunity in that. I say we, because I did need to find a mentor. That was my first step in getting on my feet. And I realized that I needed to find somebody and just add enormous amounts of value to them. So did finding my partner, added enormous amounts of value. He took me under his wing, and he's still my partner to this day. And he's a beloved friend. But, for us as an entrepreneur, you've always got to shift to the blue oceans. We felt like the house flipping and wholesaling dried up about 3 years ago. It just got too competitive. It was great being able to flip a house, making 50, 60 grand at $250,000 home, right? Nice deep margins. When you're getting to 400,000 homes and making 30 grand a home, and, you're having to go to 20 appointments to get one deal, and instead of the 8 that it used to, that's when you got to kind of raise an eyebrow and say, what's going on here? And, so for us, we just saw a huge blue ocean in new construction. We'd done some accidental new construction projects over the years. One of those, it's like, well, the tornado hit it or the fire took down most of it. Let's just cut out all the black stuff, hire a structural engineer, get the city out here, make sure what we're doing's, good and stable. And that's how we got started in new construction. We were buying homes for less than what the land cost and just kind of rebuilding them. And we said, well, what if we just pivoted? And when we pivoted and just focused all of our time and effort on doing new construction, man, things really kick off. For us, adding that layer of vertical integration. So we find all of our own deals off market. We're not relying on anybody. We build all of our own homes in-house with our construction company, HPG Construction. Things just really took off for us. Blue ocean, of course, we ran into the similar problem. We ran out of our own money, right? You're building homes, you can run out of money really fast. And for us, we were sitting there looking like, man, how do we really grow this thing? And so we had done quite a few deals, probably 140 transactions. And we're like, well, what if we used other people's money? And that's when we were able to introduce the investors into the equation. And when that hit, the sky was the limit, because now we could use our funds to hire people, grow the company, grow into the right coaching programs, the right mastermind programs to help us get to where we wanted to go. And, since we've added investors, 4 or 5 years ago, it's just been such a blue ocean. It's been great.
So there's a whole bunch of directions that I want to go here, but I'll just start with one of the misconceptions I think that's out there in real estate investing is that you can't make money or you can't make enough money or good returns on the new construction stuff, right? It's too expensive. It takes too much time. If I can wholesale and make a $20,000 fee, or I have to take on all this risk. Can you talk to me about how you guys made that decision? What made the decision, and then what are the returns that you guys see when you are using your own money? And then I also have some questions about what your fund looks like.
Yeah. So our new construction deals, if we're not making a minimum 20-25%, gross profit margin. So if we're, building a $400,000 house, we need to make at least 80 to 100 grand on that house, right? For it to be worth it, not just to us, but for risk mitigation purposes. Sure. That's another reason why we created our own in-house construction company, was we just saw too much risk with going out and hiring a builder who's taking 12 months to build a home. We want to be in and out in 8, 9, 10 months. Right. And our goal this quarter is actually to get the new construction timeframe squeezed down to 7 months, because we know there's market risk, just like anything else. We know that our portfolio is going to take a hit one day. So it's not if it can take a hit, right? With these low margin builders who are going to get squeezed out. And, it's like when Warren Buffett says, when the ocean comes out, you're going to figure out who's swimming naked, right? We don't want to be those guys. We want nice, deep equity, high margin deals. So that's what we typically look for, 20-25% gross profit margins on the back end. That's after all the hard and soft costs, right? All your agent fees, your closing costs, everything like the same. So that's how those are structured. And the light bulb for us went off when we built a home faster than we were rehabbing one. Right. Like 2 started right about the same time. You get those 80-year-old homes that I'm gutting them down to the studs. You're basically rebuilding at that point. I remember the cost to do that was almost the equivalent to building a new home, and it took longer, and the profits were only about a third. And that's when the light bulb went off for us. We're like, holy crap. 3-4 times the margins and less surprises, that changed everything. Of course, now you're running into supply chain issues and some inflation costs and rising construction costs, but we've figured out ways to mitigate that and keep those costs down.
Right. Now, are you guys doing one-off like spec build individual? You find a lot in a neighborhood and you go and do it, or are you looking for vacant land, subdividing it, entitling it, and building up neighborhoods?
Yeah. So the neighborhoods, we used to do a lot of infill spec, but it was a very similar situation during the wholesaling and flipping game. You got to build this giant marketing machine. You got to answer all the phone calls. You got to go on all the appointments. You talk to 360 people a year to do 50, 60 deals. Right. And it's just this big, giant machine. You got to keep going with the team and the overhead and the marketing. I mean, the marketing is the biggest expense for people who have these wholesale businesses. We don't have any marketing fees. We have such we have no overhead on the sales team because you don't make any money until there's a cash flow event in the company. So we transitioned away from that. And now we only do neighborhoods where we can develop the land or rezone the land. A lot of what we do is also we'll just put the land under contract, do all the rezoning, add all the value to the land. And then once it's done, we'll just, maybe sell it to another developer or a build to rent hedge fund, or we'll take it down ourselves. So we know that in order to get to doing about 300 homes a year, which is our goal, that we need to do that. We can't chase the onesie twosie infill. So that was our background. We've done a lot of that. And now most of what we're doing is the infill. It works a lot easier for your guys too. When your project managers show up to one spot, right now we've got about 3 developments going on, about 66 homes are going up, and they just show up to one spot every single day. And if you want your projects to run smooth, man, have your PM show up to the same project, everything. Okay. I guarantee you it's going to be different.
Yeah. Instead of running, all over town or to the next county to check on stuff every single day. Yeah. That makes sense. You might not have this number off the top of your head, but I think you said that you guys are vertically integrated. So you're sourcing your own deals and everything. What are you guys, I guess, percentage of your final product? What is that land cost that you guys are buying at? Do you have a number that you say, hey, it has to be 8% or 6% of the, after project completion number for you to buy, or what are you looking for?
We don't, because the horizontal looks so different and is priced very different from project to project.
Okay.
We've got a project, and again, it's all about getting creative, right? So here's the types of deals that we try to do. Again, it's all, I don't like risk. And it's funny, whenever people hear, land development or new construction, their mind immediately goes to like, oh, that's really risky. And I think that came from 2008 and 2009 when a lot of builders went out of business. I mean, hell, everybody who was in real estate, went out of business. I think that's where it came from. I joke and I, tell people who say that, like, hey, are you living in a neighborhood right now? And they said, well, yeah. I'm like, how long have you lived in the neighborhood? 15, 20 years. I'm like, great. Well, that was probably a successful development, right? The developer built that and did really well. So 99% of the time things go really well. Otherwise we wouldn't have all these great neighborhoods that we have today. But right now, how do we limit the amount of risk for ourselves and our investors? So, for example, we've got a piece of land we're rezoning right now. We're going to buy it for about $750,000. It's got an existing home on it. And we can subdivide that existing home off, keep about 2 of the 22 acres on that home, sell it for maybe like $360,000. And so our cost basis in this deal is going to be about $400,000, something like that. It's going to be entitled for 75 homes. Now, I don't need to be a genius to know that that's a deal, right? I mean, there's a lot of equity baked into that deal. So we're trying to do deals where we can get our cost basis down to, nearly nothing if we can. That way we've got all these equities in the deals. But I think the real question that you're asking yourself is, or maybe your listeners want to kind of understand how to evaluate these land deals. Typically we want to be under 20% for the land. So if it's a $500,000 home per se, we don't want to be in any more than $100,000. And that includes the land acquisition and all the costs associated with getting it ready. Now for land development, it's probably closer to 15%, infill deal, maybe 20%. But again, it just depends. Some areas can build a really small home and it sell for a ton. And so you don't have to worry about all the rising construction costs on that. Or some deals, it might be like ours where you're into it for a few $1,000s a pad. And so it's just going to depend. You can have $40,000, $50,000 per lot grading and horizontal infrastructure costs. I'd say that's pretty high. And you can have some lots that are already cleared and they slope down perfectly to the stormwater system, and you got to do hardly nothing. And maybe you're spending $10,000 a pad to get it ready. Mm-hmm. So it just depends. There's so many variables.
Right. Okay. Well, I think now I'd like to shift a little bit to like, what does your fund look like? And obviously you can't give specifics and all that good stuff, but what does your fund look like? What are your typical returns? And then I'll have some questions about how you're managing that.
Yeah. So our fund is set up to buy land, develop, and then sell new construction housing. And I always encourage people, if you want to learn more, you can go to our website, hbgcapital.net. It's Harry Bob Capital, Harry Bob Gary capital.net. I joked that .com wasn't available. We couldn't grab it. So it is a .net last name. But the way we've got it structured is investors will invest money into the fund. So you're purchasing units of basically an LLC that's set up. Fund is just a fancy word for LLC. So most people out there probably have an LLC, especially if they're in real estate. So that's all that you're doing is you're buying ownership of that LLC. And that LLC will then go and it'll buy land and it'll get loans from the bank to perform the construction or the horizontal or the vertical on it. And what we do that's a little bit different is I'm a simple guy. I'm from Memphis, Tennessee originally, grew up, parts of Birmingham, Alabama. I don't like super sophisticated waterfall structures and equity splits and deals. We just said, hey, how about we give all the money that flows into the LLC when these homes start to sell to the investors until we've paid them off their principal and their ROI. And that's worked out really well for us. So there's no split. So basically we can't make any money unless our investors get all their money back first. That's how it works. As far as the returns go, nothing's guaranteed. I can't say I guarantee anything. Right. Past performance, deals that have already closed and are said and done, anywhere between 12 and 18% is what we've seen in the past. But we really try to structure something that puts our investors' interests first and it protects their capital. That's why I really like these deals is there's a huge blue ocean right now for the people who understand how to entitle land, how to rezone it, who can actually build the neighborhoods. Most of our portfolio that we're building is going to have offers from build to rent hedge funds. I mean, that's how hot, and that's just icing on the cake. So if we can build these neighborhoods and design them to sell to the consumer, and then we end up selling them for even more to some BTR fund, that's just icing on the cake, not only for us, but for our investors. So we really want to have multiple exit strategies and have a lot of equity baked into these deals. And when we do.
Right. Yeah. And that limits your risk exposure when you have multiple exit strategies. I really appreciate that. Now, with your fund, are these you mentioned that they're only getting paid out when you guys have a cash influx into the company, right? So you take the money, you start developing the land, build the houses, and then you sell them off retail or to the build to rent hedge funds. And then that's when that money comes back in and you distribute it to the members of the fund.
Yeah. So I had a guy call me the other day and he said, so what exactly is the money used for? And what is the waterfall structure? How does it work when, the homes start to sell? Like, when do we get paid? And what's the typical time frame? Your one deal to the next. And I said, well, when we raise the money, the whole goal is to have liquidity and have a project going successful, because that's the biggest problem developers run into is they under budget and then they run out of money, or they take too long on the project and have to refinance the loan and get all that. So you want a project that's running fast and smooth. And the best way to do that is have lots of liquidity, not only for the project itself, but for the operator who's managing it. So we've structured in a way where when we raise the money, step one is whatever the down payment is for the construction loans, that will go to the bank as that down payment. Step two, any kind of closing costs that the attorneys take, that's also what the money is used for. Step three is, and this is probably the most important, and I don't see a lot of people do this, and this is where you can run into a lot of trouble, is we borrow anywhere between $60,000 and $80,000 per house as startup costs. And the startup costs are just to get the foundation package, the framing package, the doors, the windows, a lot of the products that we're going to have to use to build the home. Even if it's a little ways down the road, we want to get it on the front end. The reason why we want to get it in the front end and put these materials in our warehouse or store it at one of our vendors' locations, we want to lock in pricing.
Yeah.
That is huge right now, right? With this inflation, it is nuts. All of our future projects, we don't anticipate feeling a lot of that big inflation. We haven't with some of them because we were able to buy all those materials on the front end. So not only does it lock in pricing and prevent you from going over budget, but it also gives you a revolving door of liquidity. So at the very end of this project, you've always got this piece of liquidity. So we're not having to come out of pocket, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 per home times 60 homes to float that until we get a draw from the bank. And if we do happen to go over budget a little bit, we've got that liquidity available to use as needed. Now, once that liquidity hits the bank account at the very end of the project, because it's startup cost, right? It makes up the majority of what we syndicate and what we raise money for. So as soon as it hits the bank account at the end of the project, when the bank gets that final draw and the house is done, we just send it back to the investors and they make money on that. So that's another huge key that we do. And we also charge a small $20,000 GC fee per home. Like I said, profits on average are anywhere between 80 all the way up to 160,000 a home. So we charge a small GC fee, and that just keeps the lights on. It helps take care of some of the operational costs that we face as a company, making sure that, we're not going to run into cash flow problems. And that model has worked out really well for us and our investors.
Okay. Well, one of the things in one of our masterminds that we talked about was the difference between a fund and a syndication, and some of the concerns a lot of our guys had with the funds was that as soon as you take that money, you're having to accrue that interest that's coming from that money, and then sometimes that'll push people into making poor decisions in investment wise to just start to cover it. But the way that you guys have it structured, that's not really applicable. Am I correct in that?
We could go raise money before we have deals. I don't really see a need to do that. We could, but it's structured very similar to like a syndication. We don't go raise money until we have a deal. I can't send an investor a packet with the pro forma and the numbers and the purchase price and the budget and the blueprints and the plans. Like, I'm not raising money for that project. So I would just tell them, don't go raise money until you have a deal.
Sure. That makes sense to me. Okay, awesome. Well, if our listeners wanted to find out more about your system, about what you guys are doing, or I'm sure some people are looking for passive ways to invest in real estate. Do you have a place that we could send them?
Yeah. So if you're somebody who's interested in learning more about capital preservation, passive income, building your legacy, we do have a website with a ton of great free educational resources on it. hbgcapital.net, again, harrybobgarycapital.net. We've got an ebook on there that's recession resistant passive income. It runs through all the different asset classes that we see an opportunity in right now. And, right now we love affordable new construction housing, not to be confused with Section 8 or government housing. I'm talking about, like, what do you hear on the news? Lack of first-time home buyer homes. They can't get in the market. It's what's driving up inflation. That's what we want to build. So staying under that $385,000 and less price point in very high, fast-growing cities like Nashville, in states with no income taxes that are very business-friendly, didn't shut everything down during COVID. That's where we want to be. So grab that book on our website. We've also got another book under the educational resources tab called 100 Questions Passive Investors Should Be Asking Before Investing. I wrote that book because I had an investor call me, and it was one of the saddest conversations I've ever had. He called me and he said that he lost all of his money investing it in a real estate investor. And he's asking me if he could do anything about it. And he did everything wrong. He didn't secure anything. There was no paperwork. He just literally wired the guy the money. And so I was like, how can I prevent this from ever happening again? And so that's one of the reasons why I've got that book on my website, because if you go through all those questions when you're vetting someone and think about giving them the money, I promise you the biggest mistake people make is they just don't understand what they're getting into because they don't have the experience to ask the right questions. Don't do that. You've got the right questions now. Go to the site and get that book. Ask them all those questions, and I promise you, you'll have a much better idea whether or not you should be getting into this deal with somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great information. Well, Brandon, we really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for coming on our show. And I'm going to head over there to the website to get that free ebook right now. We appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And if anybody wants to schedule an introductory call, we've got the Calendly link to our website right there. We look forward to getting to know you. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Perfect. Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Jam. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. For more information, check out our website, therealestatejam.com, or find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at The Real Estate Jam. If you have any questions, feel free to drop us an email at therealestatejam@gmail.com. See you next episode.